Hi, this is Margaret Maloney, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. Together we will consider life, death, and impermanence. Because in between birth and death, we lose things. Not just our glasses and our keys. We lose identities, relationships, ideas, and more. But what we can gain right now is facing this together, and we will gain freedom, peace, and progress on our path. Hi, everyone. I am so happy today. I am here with Sukhema, who is in Glasgow, and we are meeting online today. And this is our first time to speak, and I'm already very excited. He has really some lovely wisdom to share with us, and I can already tell that he is very much a sharing person, that he cares about the experiences we're having in our lives. And I'm going to stop there and ask him to introduce himself briefly to us.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. How do I introduce myself? I was born Larry Butler, and I'm now Sukhema. And one of the losses I might talk about is the loss of my name, which is only a recent loss. But I was born in pig country, southern Illinois, Decatur.
I didn't know that.
Where Abraham Lincoln was. And my mother was babysat by Carl Sandburg, a well-known poet in America.
Wow.
And I grew up in California, Northern California, and my grandfather had a farm in the Lake District, which I used to go to regularly. But I left during the Civil Rights Movement, which is a big part of my life, was being an activist in the Civil Rights Movement, going to prison a few times. And for many years, I was an exile in the United Kingdom, where I live now in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And as an exile for many years, I couldn't leave this country because I had a prison sentence in America. But fortunately, a kind English woman agreed to marry me.
She probably liked you a little bit.
Yes, she did. And so that meant that I could stay in this country, and I did. And eventually the Peanut president, Jimmy Carter, gave an amnesty in around 1979, which meant that I could travel again and go to America. Okay. But another loss that I probably might talk about today is also the loss of a continent, of the USA. Mm-hmm. Because I'm no longer a USA citizen, I'm a UK citizen. I kept my citizenship for many years for visiting family in America. Mm-hmm. But eventually, during the Donald Trump era, I gave up my citizenship for many different reasons. Okay. So I feel I've lost a country as well. My background includes working as a family therapist, a drama therapist. I do movement therapy. I'm a Tai Chi teacher as well. And I work a lot in hospitals, and I run training courses for doctors and nurses and things like communication skills. So and my background has been throughout has been publishing poetry, but also research. I'm a very keen researcher. I did a big project for the Greater Glasgow Health Board called Arts on Prescription, mm-hmm. looking at how do we prescribe the arts. Exercise on prescription has been quite popular in this country. I don't know if it is in America, but doctors have used it. People with heart conditions, it's good to get them out and exercising. Mm-hmm. Well, we thought that with regard mental health, arts can be a really important contribution. And so I did this research, a randomized controlled trial looking at arts on prescription. And also previously to that, I did some research based on men's health, called Better Health for Men, for the Scottish Health Education Board for Scotland, which mm-hmm. included setting up groups all over Scotland. So that's a bit of my background. But to start off, because this theme today that you suggested, Margaret, was on loss, I thought it would be good to read a poem about loss, quite a famous poem that probably most of your listeners will know. It's by Elizabeth Bishop, and it's called One Art. And I'd just like to read it as a way of opening this conversation with you.
I'd love that. Please do.
It's a beautiful poem. It's very simple. It's a villanelle, if people are familiar with villanelle, with lots of repetitions. Okay. Called One Art. The art of losing things isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost, that their loss is no disaster. I lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last, or next to last, of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster. Some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, a joking voice, a gesture I love. I shan't have lied. It's evident. The art of losing's not too hard to master. Though it may look like, write it, like disaster.
That is perfect. It is perfect. I love all of it, of course, but I especially love the little reminder towards the beginning. She says but we lose something every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
We lose something every day. Maybe we don't always think about it that way. And then also, just that the art, because it is an art. This is something that we not have to. I say have to when I feel strongly about something. It's something I'd like us all to get used to in our lives, that I still grapple with, is that we do lose something every day. We don't always think about it. And the other day, somebody suggested to me that we are always grieving something, and that maybe we make that sound like too ominous, because it could be grieving the loss of your mother's watch.
Exactly.
Right. But
sometimes small things,
yes,
can create lots of feelings.
Yes.
And sometimes it's because it reminds you of something else as well.
And sometimes they're conscious choices. For example, I know you just shared that you went away on retreat and you've come back with a Dharma name.
Yeah.
And in that process, you're letting go of the name you were, I'm going to say christened, because you were born in the United States and possibly, I don't know, we haven't discussed this, possibly to Judeo-Christian parents. So there was probably some kind of a christening or naming. And now you're saying goodbye to that.
Yes, that's right. It's interesting. Somebody was asking me about my name, which was Larry or Lawrence. My full name is John Lawrence Butler Jr., obviously named after my father. Mm-hmm. And Lawrence, actually, the Hebrew of Lawrence is Lazarus.
Oh, okay.
The one who rises from the dead.
Well, isn't that perfect for our topic?
Exactly. That's what I thought too. But losing my name is still something that I'm getting used to. Mm-hmm. At the moment, when I meet people that have known me, that I haven't seen for 3.5 months, they say, "Oh, hello, Larry. Oops, Sukhema."
Okay.
They say Larry first, and then they realize, "Oh no, I'm not Larry anymore. I'm Sukhema." And eventually, it's going to be the Larry will drift away. But at the moment, there is a sense of being in a bardo. I'm in between.
Yes, you are, aren't you? Because some people are still going to see you. And then how does one go about announcing and sharing with people, I would like you to now call me my Dharma name?
Yeah, I've just been doing that in a meeting yesterday. And with my Dharma brothers and sisters, it's easy.
Right.
But with a lot of my secular activity, it's not so easy. I've got a writing group in the Kibble Palace, which is the part of the Botanic Gardens in Glasgow tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We're meeting with 10 people who were in my writing group. It's a therapeutic writing group. Okay. And I've asked them to call me Sukhema. But they're probably going to find it a little bit awkward. And I find it awkward hearing it. I hear the name Sukhema and I say, oh, who are you talking to?
Oh, that's right. So not only do you have to train us,
I have to train
myself. You must also train yourself because of years of hearing people call you Larry. And now it's super like Sukhema. I'm like, who's that? Oh, it's me.
Exactly.
And do you feel different? Is there a different feeling within?
There is. I mean, the name Sukhema simply means he who is very peaceful at ease. And it's something that I'm aspiring towards. That's why I've been given the name. I'm not there yet. It's interesting, having practiced Tai Chi since 1970, you practice what you need to learn. Tai Chi is about slowness. It's about doing nothing. It's about being very calm and relaxed. Well, I've been practicing that for many years, but I still haven't learned it. So I've been given this name to help me learn more about being peaceful, doing nothing.
So your name is like a reminder. This is who I am.
Reminder. This is who I'm being. This is who I'm being. This is who I am becoming. Mm-hmm. And it's an aspiration, and it's like a mantra as well. So but
Ah.
I've lost Larry, and yet I need to honor that part of me as well. So I need to work out some rituals that let go of Larry. Just as when we lose anything, there needs to be some sort of ritual letting go in order to really put it to rest. Just like we have a funeral for a dead person, we can lose anything, and if we don't grieve it, we don't lose it. It sticks in our muscles, in our blood, it sticks in our bones, it clings to us. We think we've lost it, but it's still there as a holding on. And I think the art of losing is what I feel is really important. It's the art of letting go. Really,
the art of letting go. And the ritual being an important part to many people for that art of letting go.
Exactly. For many years, Ratna Devi and I, my partner and wife, has led retreats called Earth Rituals. And we would get people to design rituals that they needed to do in order to move on in their life, to transform. And we often use the Padmasambhava mantra as part of that, and a fire ritual. But people would create their own personal rituals. And sometimes they would want only one or two people. Like there was a woman on retreat who had had a miscarriage and wanted to have a ritual just with women present, 3 or 4 women that she invited. And she did a special burial up in the mountains where we were. And it was witnessed by these other people. And the witnessing was important to her in order to let go of the feelings that she had around the loss of the baby.
That's very helpful. I mean, if you may, I'd like to ask a ritual question, which I didn't know I was going to ask you, right? So for so many people during the pandemic, their rituals of letting go of their loved ones were different or non-existent or put on hold. And I wonder, what is something to do in a situation where perhaps you don't have the ritual you thought you were going to have? What do you recommend for situations like that?
Well, one of my work over the last 15 years has been with cancer patients in a cancer care center. And I still do run a therapeutic writing group. And one of the things that often I've done is people who have died and they haven't been able to have some sort of ritual. We create our own ritual, which may include writing them a letter as if they're still alive, saying the things they couldn't say when they were around. Often that happens, particularly around if you haven't been able to be in contact because of COVID or whatever, you can't be able to communicate what you want to, but you can write. And sharing that writing with somebody else aloud, sharing it with your doctor, sharing it with family, helps in terms of the ritual. And sometimes if you've had that sort of loss, it is a trauma in itself.
Yes.
And if you've had a trauma like that, it's important that if you write something that is powerful and expresses really what you need to express, it's important to share it more than once. Share it with the family, share it with another friend. And the more you share it, but sometimes when in my groups, if somebody starts sharing a piece of writing that they did of this ilk, they burst into tears partway through.
Oh, of course.
And what I encourage them to do is come back, start again, read it again, and then read it again. And until they can feel a flow coming, a flow through, allow the tears. And I'll give you one clear example of something that one of the people that I worked with who helped me publish a book called Bundles of Bog Cotton, which is writing from cancer patients, she died. She helped me edit the book. And they asked me to conduct her funeral at a place called the House of an Art Lover, which is built by a famous architect named Rennie McIntosh in Glasgow. About 100 people there. And one of the people was an opera singer who was trained recently and was performing in an opera company in Köln in Germany. But she was from London, but she knew Morag, the woman who had died, from being a child. Their mother was best friends, and she was up first in conducting the service. And she started up singing a very famous song by Rabbie Burns, who's a poet in Scotland, Robert Burns, and it was called A Fond Kiss. And she started singing it, and she burst into tears in the first line. There I am, leading this funeral, in celebration of this woman's life, and she burst into tears. Her mother's in the front row. So I pause, I say, let's breathe again, stop, invite her mother up. Would you hold your daughter's hand? Now let's start the song again. So she started the song again, and I tell you, there wasn't a dry eye in the whole place. And the rest of the service went really beautifully, just beautifully. She sang as nobody else. I've never heard that song sung so beautifully.
Wow.
And at the end of the service, during the time when people are having tea and cakes and things like that, several people came up to me and whispered in my ear, would you do my service?
So do you have a list now? So will you?
I've been involved with 2 or 3 events like that. So yeah, I do have a list.
That's nice. That's nice. You know, so often people will ask, like, well, what do Buddhist services look like? And I'm not saying that this one was, but what do different kinds of services look like? You know, and so, and I guess the answer maybe is they look like however you want them to look like.
Exactly. Yeah. You can design them yourself.
That's beautiful. That's thank you. I think that's really excellent advice. And so you're having some rituals. I'm sure you had an official ritual becoming Sukhema, but now you have ritual that you are still doing, I'm thinking, in your own life. Is that true?
Yeah. Every day.
Every day.
Every day. Yes, there's various rituals, including a meditation ritual, of course.
Yes.
And what we call puja, which I do every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And puja, can I ask, what do you do? What are you doing for your puja? Is it meditation and offering, incense, chanting?
It will vary. I usually have some sort of chanting. My main practice is Kuan Yin.
Okay.
And I use her mantra. I have 2 or 3 versions of her mantra. So I go through what's known as the bodhicitta practice, which is Tonglen. Usually in my rituals. I'm bringing people to mind who are suffering. That's what daily practice anyway.
Thank you. I remember when I was in the depths of when my mom and my husband had just died, and one of my meditation teachers was coming to the house to sit with me, and he taught me to do Tonglen to help. And it was so helpful. And he would say, like, but he was teaching me there are other people who have great suffering. So send something out to them. And it was very helpful. Definitely to take your mind off of your own and to send loving kindness and, white light to others. It was tremendously helpful. Very good.
So one of the things that I have found very useful over the years is having small networks of support around loss. Like I've been involved for about 12 years with a group called Dialogue. I may have mentioned this to you, where we meet and talk about death and dying. But they could be little deaths as well: loss of things, loss of a house, loss of your cat. All sorts of things can happen that you feel is a little death. Well, it started with a friend of mine, Kay Carmichael, who was quite a well-known writer. She wrote a book called Sin and Forgiveness in a Post-Christian Culture. It's part of her PhD work. Which she was 78 when she got her PhD. But when she died, her husband, who was a professor in Glasgow University, was involved with the Wilson government in the 70s, named David Donnison. He came to my writing group. And every time he came, we met every 2 weeks, he would bring another poem written as if he's speaking to his wife, Kay.
Oh.
And after about 20 poems, I said, David, I think there's a collection here. And I said, I'll publish it. And it's called Requiem. And anybody that I published, my publishing firm is called Place-Based Publications. And as I told you, I have a book out just recently called Living or Dying, which I sent you some information. That is largely David Donnison's writing. There's other people around it. David's little booklet, which is only about 30 pages. Each author that I publish, I invite them to choose a charity they'd like to fundraise. So my publishing company, called PlaySpace, is not profit. Any profit goes to the charity they choose. So his publication is in its 5th edition and has raised over £500 from a charity called Freedom from Torture.
I love that.
And what happened is that after we published the book, we just started talking. about death. And we thought it wouldn't be nice to have a small group that just met in our front room, no more than 8 people. No
okay,
agenda.
you know I was going to ask how many people, of course.
Yeah, no more than 8.
Okay.
Just a small group, and we'd meet. There'd be no agenda, no note taking, no bureaucracy, and we just talk about death.
Okay.
Including things like assisted suicide, your neighbor's not well, they've got terminal diagnosis. Anything we wanted to talk about was open for discussion. So we just started meeting probably 12 years ago. And David, because he's a writer and written lots of academic books and had just started writing poetry, he was in his late 80s. He became our archivist. We started taking notes and archiving what we were doing. And we'd write book reviews. We'd read the latest publications like Ato Gwande's book on mortality and various other people. And gradually we knew that he was building up to producing another book.
Wow.
And I made the day I was with him, the day he died at 92. And the book was probably still in draft and lots of loose ends. And I made a commitment that I would make sure it gets published. And I brought together other people, other writers to contribute to the book. So it becomes an anthology. About a third of the book is his. Other writers are in it as well. There's a chapter on digital legacy.
Oh, wow.
There's chapters on assisted suicide. There's chapters on 10 things I need to do before I die.
Okay.
Things like that.
Is it fair to say then, because as you're speaking, this idea has popped up for me, that is it fair to say that you following through on publishing this book was a way of honoring your friend?
Oh, it certainly was. Yes.
Yeah,
I was holding his feet, if you know reflexology, at the pulse point of fear when he died.
Oh, okay.
And his 2 sons were there as well. And we just waited for him to gradually die. And it was a moving experience. But before he died, I made that, while he was still conscious, I made that commitment to him. And I organized the funeral and the wake as well. And which partly because I'd interviewed him about what he wanted. So I knew exactly what his wishes were. But that group is continuing, and it continues now. I had a meeting with it 2 days ago on Zoom. We used to meet in people's front rooms, but because of COVID, we're meeting on Zoom.
Okay.
Two other people from that group have died. We've had new members join. A man who's 87 has just joined, who was the author of a book called Autumn Voices, which is about writers over 70 and what creativity and aging means to them, and something they've published since they were 70 as well, as a sample of their writing. But the dialogue group started just word of mouth with 8 people, and that's what we said we'd limit it. If somebody leaves for whatever reason, then we're open to a new member joining. And we always discuss it first. If somebody has an idea of somebody to join, we discuss it. Just by word of mouth, there's now 14 groups throughout the UK, just meeting in people's houses.
Oh, that is so wonderful. I'm curious about some of your observations, since, the group is about death, all kinds of death, not just I call it the big D death, right? But all kinds of death. What do you observe is one of the biggest challenges that we face as people, as using the lens of your group as your laboratory to represent humanity? That's being lofty there, but.
Well, I think the big challenge that comes up again and again in conversations is the one about the death of the human beings and the death of the planet Earth. Okay. Our survival, and the fact that children in other countries are starving to death.
Yes.
It's just that comes up again and again. And I think I've mentioned. I'm not sure if I mentioned to you the idea of the great grief.
No, I don't think we talked about that yet. Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, a friend of mine, Ted Bowman, who has a chapter in the book, Living or Dying, called The Great Grief. So he's a grief educator, lives in Minnesota, but I've worked with him over many years running training courses for training people to facilitate therapeutic writing groups in Scotland. And as well as in the UK. So he's come over, and he works a lot in hospices as well, training staff in hospices. Well, Ted has written this chapter, and what occurred to him is that over and over again, when people have a personal loss, and that could be a house, it could be a person, whatever, that they grieve about it, but then sometimes they wake up in the morning and they're grieving about the fires in Australia. And they wonder, why am I grieving about the fire? Because when you have a personal grief and you will open to that personal grief, it opens out into a greater grief.
And does that mean that I'm more likely to be aware of the difficult things that are happening around the world and to join in that grief? Is it I'm more grief inclined, or is it more open heart compassion?
It's both. It's both
Okay.
more open heart compassion, and also you become more aware of it.
I see.
And it's very much, you probably know Joanna Macy's work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's related to that idea of the grief.
Okay.
And how do we grieve? How do we honor the grief that we feel for the world, but also for ourselves? And what Joanna says is there is no difference between the personal grief and the greater grief. The two are interconnected. So you open to one and you naturally start to open to the other. It's like that sense of Indra's net. It starts spreading out.
And this is why we are living in a state of grief on a continual basis. And I guess you could tell I paused and I said that carefully because I don't want people to think that I'm saying something difficult or negative. And that just really goes back to the societal norms that are around me, around grief, as if it's a bad, difficult thing that must be gotten over. And it's a normal state of being. Is it fair to say that?
Yes, yes.
What would you recommend to help us live with our great grief?
Well, I am a facilitator of the work that reconnects.
Okay.
So I really feel that one of the things that Joanna has always said is never do this work alone.
Oh.
Never grieve alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important that you connect with others in whatever you feel passionate about, whatever you're concerned, whatever you're grieving about. Like at the Maggie Cancer Care Center, we always set up small groups, like it could be prostate cancer support group, so that a group of men get together who all have been suffering from prostate cancer, and that sense of support that they need. Anything that you're grieving about, you will find that there are other people grieving too. And finding a way to connect with those people, either online or in person, probably in your own town, there will be people who suffer from a similar grief to yourself. And I think that sense of connecting with others reduces and helps to heal the grieving process, or encourage the grieving process to continue and to move through it. And just accepting that this will happen. Like I read one of your pieces of writing on the Global Buddhist Door.
Oh, thank you.
And about we're about loss. And we will lose everything.
We will lose everything.
Yeah. Chase Twitchell's poetry.
I don't. Will you share some with me or tell me about it?
Well, there's a very short poem. It's called "The Year I Got Rid of Everything."
Oh,
what a title! The Year I Got Rid of Everything. It's a very simple poem. A huge invisible magnet dragged me up into its powers. It lifted me high above the beautiful wool carpets and the books. I put on a dress made of bones and danced alone in the great emptiness. That's the whole poem.
Wow.
A huge invisible magnet dragged me up into its powers. It lifted me high above the beautiful wool carpets and the books. I put on a dress made of bones and danced alone in the great emptiness.
That's beautiful. I love that. It's for me such imagery. Like in my mind, I am now seeing the skeleton above me, kind of nowhere and everywhere, dancing in a happy fashion, a happy skeleton in a happy fashion. I love that.
I belong to Glasgow in Scotland. I've been here since 1981. My children are here. I wrote a poem. They're not here at home. They're one of them's 40 years old. I got two grandchildren as well.
Lovely.
But I wrote a poem called "Do I Belong to Glasgow?" Somehow feeling one of the important things about grief is to open out to the bigger picture, the wider perspective, the big history of the past, present, and the future. Do I belong to Glasgow? I left Scotland 200 years ago, thereabout. I was cleared out. Have you heard of the Highland clearances?
Yes.
Okay, my family come from the Highlands originally.
Oh, so
I was cleared out, then came back in 1981. My sons grew up smelling the Kelvin, which is the river across the road from here.
okay.
My great-great-granddad was Walter Scott. My great-great-grand was his servant. So my mother says, but I don't believe her. She disclaimed that.
Okay.
She did. Now I eat chips and crisps, not fries and chips. I say tomato, not tomato. My body, not my body, belongs here by the Clyde till I die. The Clyde is the main river where we had a lot of shipbuilding in Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
So that little poem
That's beautiful.
is what I wrote that as a way of beginning to let go of being a USA citizen.
Yes, because you left. So you said you left during the civil rights movement.
I left during the civil rights movement, but then I realized my family left Scotland during the Highland clearances to go to America.
So is that kind of what drew you back to Glasgow? Was that you knew there was that familial connection, almost that it's in your DNA?
Perhaps it was more probably to do with circumstance of being convicted of treason.
Okay.
In America, and you know, and my father's and mother's backgrounds are Scots, Irish, English, German as well. So you know, there was a bit of a mix, as there is in a lot of Americans. Americans are all mongrels, really.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are, and proud of it. I feel like we should be proud of it. I don't know if everyone's proud of it. Some people are not, I suppose.
Yeah. Another poem, which you have you heard of this is when answer your question about grieving and how do we deal with the loss. Have you heard of the National Association of Poetry Therapy?
I have not. Maybe you would tell me about that.
It's started in America, and in Scotland, in the UK, I established, was one of the founder members of the organization called Lapidus, which is Creative Words for Health and Well-Being. Mm-hmm. And a long time ago, probably in the 90s, I went to a conference in Denver on the Poetry Therapy Conference, met up with a poet named Naomi Shiabnai, who I then brought over to Scotland. Mm-hmm. But I also met a man named Charles Rossiter, who wrote this poem, which I'm going to read to you in a moment, called Daddy, What Color is Thunder? Now, this poem was written for Erica, who died at the age of probably 19, was she hit by a car. Ouch. And that was her daughter.
Okay.
And this is the poem he wrote. Daddy, what color is thunder? And you were there in the wrong place at the wrong time. Innocent, midday, on a familiar 2-lane road, and probably singing along with the radio. Erica, I see you everywhere in the mirror. My eyes are your eyes. My body, the body you once had, now ashes in the sea. Be still, daughter. The tides will take you. You will know the color of thunder. So what Charles is doing here, and we had a meeting about this and looking at grief and how we cope with loss. He's confronting head on the death of a loved one. And it's never easy, but it is powerful. And in the grieving process, if you write a poem about it. And in this poem, the poet Rossiter focuses on the details of the deceased daughter. To write this kind of poem, you need to get a clear mental image of the person you are writing about. Right. And it may help you to look at pictures in the family album, watch a family video, recall in your mind how the person moved or looked or talked, and then put it down on paper. Just put it down on paper. And I think that I'm amazed how powerful that can be. People writing about things that they've lost. And that could be a person, it could be an object. Go into great detail to describe what you've lost. Is one way of beginning to let it go. And once you've written it, sometimes I encourage people to burn it, bury it.
I have heard that. Yeah. Like just do it for yourself and then maybe read it out loud to the person, although if they're not there. Or like you said, maybe sometimes to a small group of people and then release it Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
That is amazing.
There's a couple of poems that I still haven't shared that I would like to share with you.
Okay.
One of them is mine, and one of them is by a well-known American poet called Ellen Bass, who I've been in communication with her. I have permission to publish this poem, which I have done in the book called Bundles of Bulk Cotton. But okay. I think it does, her poem does, I've used a lot to help people work with their grief.
Okay.
And it's a very simple poem. Often I will begin my writing group with a prompt where I don't give any instruction. I just say, write the phrase, the thing is, and keep writing for 7 minutes. Non-stop writing, free writing. And when people do that, it often opens out into something that they really want to talk about. And then later I will share this poem, simply called The Thing Is.
Okay.
The thing is to love life. To love it even when you have no stomach for it. When everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, and your throat is filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you so heavily, it is like heat, tropical, moist, thickening the air so it's heavy like water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief. How long can a body withstand this, you think? And yet you hold life like a face between the palms of your hands, a plain face with no charming smile or twinkle in your eye, and you say, yes, I will take you, I will love you again. So this poem for me suggests that even when it is hardest, we can love and appreciate life.
Yes.
We can reflect on our willingness to hold life like a face in the palm of my hands. When it is most difficult, when you are most loving of life, what do? Then when you are most depressed or grief-stricken, frightened, how do you cope? And I encourage people in my groups to make a list or a list poem that includes your coping strategies and your life-affirming activities. And asking the question, how many of these things do you do on a regular basis? How many more could you do?
There you go. Maybe it's because I knew, not maybe, I'm sure it was because I was looking forward to our discussion. And so sometimes as I'm beginning to talk to people, I reflect upon my own journey a little bit. And I do know that at the beginning, when I had two of my loved ones die so close together.
Yeah.
I really went to a place of trying to find a way to be grateful. And so in a way, her poem speaks to me of that. And as you are as well, of just remembering that, you're still here. This is still your life. And there are so many good things. And I know that at first I was probably saying something in a way to deflect, to help other people feel better. Cause it's like they felt badly, right? And they felt badly and they didn't know what to do. So I just wanted to let them know I was okay. And then I would figure out later if I was okay or not. But then it became real and a mantra, which was that in a difficult situation, I am as well positioned as possible, was one of the things I used to tell myself every day. And it was tremendously helpful. Great. And so it kind of evolved from something I said to make sure everyone knew I was okay, again, whether I was or not. But then it really became true. And that's not as eloquent as what you just read. But
so when people are going through a process of people with cancer or whatever terminal illness, and often the carer needs more support than the person going through the process of the journey towards death.
Absolutely.
Partly because the person going through that journey has doctors, nurses, all sorts of people looking after them, and the person who's the carer, the loved one, often doesn't have very much support, and that needs to be recognized. And we recognize it at the Maggie Cancer Care Center where I work, and we often have support groups for the carers.
That's so good, because I remember one day we were there, and Ed was in some of his appointments, and somebody saw me in the hallway, and I think it was like one of the social workers at the cancer center called me in, and she was talking to me. And she's like, but who's taking care of you? And I was like,
exactly. Yeah.
And I remember at the time I kind of said, well, I'll take care of myself after he's gone. And she said, well, how do you know there'll be anything left of you? You know? Yeah. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay. 2 little poems. One of them is about we talk about loss. Every day we lose things, as I said.
Yes,
And
every day.
This is a little poem I wrote, typical of my everyday experiences. So I wrote this, and it's simply called Forgotten. Forgotten and discarded piles of papers, neatly stacked away on shelves, hiding months and years of treasure, bills and letters, notebooks and ads, magazines and half-filled-in forms, uncashed checks and loose notes, looking for that one piece of paper, not knowing which pile it's in, that pleasure of rummaging, almost finding after hours of searching, then not remembering what it was you were looking for.
Thank you. And the way you read that, I was actually picturing this experience, but obviously a shared experience, right? That we've had of like, where is it? Where is it? And the first, maybe you begin really upset. So like there's that denial and anger about the losing of the thing, the bill, the check, the letter, and then going through and going, oh, look at this. Oh, I found this. Oh, there's this part.
And then by the time you get to the end, you've forgotten what you were looking for.
What was I doing? What was I doing? And then you know what? On another day, possibly going through the same process, you'll find the thing that you were looking for today.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you'll go like, oh, I remember that day when I was looking for that. And I was so upset. And obviously my life went on and I was okay without that card or letter or bill. Absolutely. Do you have another one for us?
I'll finish with this personal one to my granddaughter. Oh. And this was written when she, during COVID, and she asked me, could I bury Burke at the allotment? The allotment is a community garden, which I have a little plot of land where we grow vegetables and things. Okay. And she wanted to bury her guinea pig next, just by my apple tree.
Oh.
And it's called Burying Burke. Oh. For Fia Butler, my granddaughter, who's 9 years old now. She was 8 or 7 when we buried Burke at the beginning of COVID. Mm-hmm. Burying Burke. Processing along the fence lined with brambles and nettles and long stems of white yarrow with tinges of pink, we have no words. The gulls cry and pigeons roo-caroo accompany our short journey from the padlock gate to plot 60, wading through damp grass. And we have no words. You choose a spot by the apple tree. We take turns digging, then collect flowers from inside the box, on top of the box, and to silently mark the mound. Stroking his fur before closing the lid, your mouth opens, but you have no words. Before we bury Burke, I asked you, do you want to say anything? Your lips quiver, then you kiss your palm and toss love towards the box in the hole. We sprinkle rose petals until pink covers the lid. Then you dig until there's a mound marked with a stone, surrounded by nasturtiums, feverfew, and yellow courgette blooms. Pigeons and gulls fill the silence. After a few minutes, standing still, you want a sandwich. Then go to the tap to wash your hands. In a quiet voice, you ask, can we have a cuddle?
Thank you. That so beautifully encapsulates so much of what we had a chance to talk about today.
Yeah.
The acknowledgement of the different kinds of loss, the importance of ritual.
Exactly.
And the fact that we continue on with these everyday parts of our lives, which can also be part of the ritual.
Exactly.
And then that sense, what you said of don't do it alone. There's that, can we have a cuddle?
Yeah.
And how much she will treasure that poem.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure she will. It'll be in my next collection, which is going to be published probably early February. It's been a delight meeting you, Margaret.
You too. Thank you so much. What a lovely sharing person you are. This is going to be so helpful for everyone. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, margaretmeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.